So, you've decided to become a designer. You think it's going to be all about creativity and self-expression, turning your cool ideas into reality, and maybe even getting some praise along the way. But what no one tells you is that designing is less about making things look good and more about scrolling through weird requests, endless revisions, and of course, a lot of coffee. I mean, a lot. You start off your career with all the excitement, ready to rule the design world. You're sketching ideas, playing with colors, and feeling pretty good about yourself. But then things start to get messy. That project you thought was gonna be fun, suddenly it's full of mixed feedbacks and confusing directions. The client says they want something fresh and unique, but what they really mean is copy what everyone else is doing, but somehow make it different. You start doubting every choice, every pixel, and before you know it, that little plant you swore you'd keep alive is now dying on your desk. Much like your enthusiasm. And then there are the emails. Requests come in that make you question if the client ever knows what they really want. They will say things like, "We want it modern but with a classic feel," or "Can it be bold but subtle?" As if you are supposed to understand those paradoxes and somehow make them work. You're constantly going back and forth, tweaking designs that never seem to hit the mark. And let's not forget about the classic nightmare of every designer, the endless revisions. You finally think you've nailed the design, send it off with a sigh of relief, and then more feedbacks. Can we try this color? Or can we make it more playful but also more serious? First off, what does that even mean? You'll spend hours tweaking the same thing over and over, only to realize that the original version was probably the best one after all. And then there is the scope creep. What started as a simple video project turns into a multi-layered nightmare. One day you're designing a logo, and before you know it, you're creating an entire brand strategy, social media graphics, and an ad campaign. Cause you are so good at this stuff, right? It's like every new email brings a surprise guest to the party, and none of them brought snacks. The project keeps growing, your workload doubles, and you're out there wondering how you end up doing the job of 3 people for the price of 1. And out of nowhere, you get that client who suddenly decide they are the design experts. You know the type. The ones who've watched a couple YouTube videos and now they think they are the next big thing. They start throwing terms like kerning and leading like they invented them. And suddenly, every little thing needs to be changed. They will ask you to add more white space and then immediately fill it with the text. It's a never-ending battle between what makes sense and what they think looks cool. And then there's the infamous inspiration phase. You know, when the client sends you a Pinterest board with thousands of pins and says, "I want something like this." And that this they show you is a mishmash of styles, colors, and trends that make absolutely no sense together. You're supposed to take this pile of garbage and turn it into a cohesive design. Perfect. But then, just when you think you can't take it anymore, the creative block hits. You're looking at an empty screen and your mind feels just as empty as your coffee cup. You try to spark some inspiration by scrolling through design sites, but instead, you just end up feeling overwhelmed and a little defeated. Nothing seems right and every idea feels worse than the last. All the creativity you had vanishes, leaving you with nothing but doubt and a fast approaching deadline. But somehow, in the midst of all this chaos, you keep going. You finish the project even if it's at the last minute. You hit that send button, feeling a weird mix of exhaustion and accomplishment. You know there is a good chance it will come back with more changes, but for a moment, you are just glad it's done. And despite all the frustrations, there is a tiny bit of satisfaction in seeing you work out there, even if it took 10 rounds of final edits to get there. But in the end, the chaos, the confusing feedbacks, the endless revisions, and even the creative block are just part of the journey. It's not always pretty and it's definitely not easy, but there is something about it that keeps you hooked. Maybe it's the thrill of solving tough design problems or the simple joy of creating something that didn't exist before. Whatever it is, it's enough to make you stay, even when it feels like you're losing your mind. So, from one designer to another, may your coffee be strong, your clients be clear, and your revisions be minimal. And remember, even when it feels like you're in over your head, you're still out there making a world a little bit more interesting. One design at a time. Thanks for being here. Adios.